You wake up in a golden palace. Servants bow at your feet. An entire empire stretches before you, from the frozen tundra of Siberia to the Black Sea's shores. You are the Tsar of all the Russias, the most powerful ruler on earth. But here's the terrifying truth. You probably wouldn't survive the year. Welcome to Imperial Russia, where absolute power meant absolutely nothing except an absolutely brutal death. The Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, 1,500 rooms, gold leaf covering every surface, crystal chandeliers that cost more than entire villages. As Tsar, you'd control the largest empire in human history, 11 time zones of pure, unadulterated power. Or so it seemed. The morning ritual alone was intoxicating. Noble courtiers prostrated themselves as you passed. Your word could exile a man to Siberia or elevate a peasant to nobility. The Orthodox Church proclaimed you God's chosen representative on earth. Every Russian subject, all 126 million of them, existed solely to serve your will. The opulence was staggering. Fabergé eggs worth millions, banquets with swan ice sculptures and caviar mountains. Your personal ballet company, a private army of Cossack guards. The Amber Room, called the eighth wonder of the world, decorated with 6 tons of amber and gold. You owned everything from the Arctic Ocean to the Caspian Sea, entire forests, diamond mines in Siberia. The wealth of nations flowed into your treasury. Foreign ambassadors traveled months just to kiss your ring. But here's what the history books don't tell you. That golden throne, it was a death trap. Every luxury came with a price written in blood. Every ceremony masked whispers of betrayal. That crown glittering with the Orlov diamond and Black Prince's ruby, those jewels were cursed with the paranoia, violence, and inevitable doom that consumed nearly every czar who dared wear them. The myth of absolute power was exactly that, a myth, because in Imperial Russia, power didn't protect you. It painted a target on your back that could be seen from space. Your first mistake would be trusting anyone, even family. The Russian nobility, the boyars, the princes, the ancient families. They smiled, they bowed, but they sharpened their knives in the shadows. Peter III learned this the hard way in 1762. 6 months into his reign, his own wife Catherine conspired with the Imperial Guard to overthrow him. Days later, he was mysteriously strangled in custody. Even the terrible knew the truth about power. Everyone was plotting against him. His solution? Pure, unbridled paranoia. He created the Oprichniki, a secret police force dressed in black, riding black horses, carrying the severed heads of dogs and brooms as symbols. They tortured, murdered, and terrorized anyone Ivan suspected of disloyalty, including his own son, whom he killed in a fit of rage. The palace corridors echoed with whispered conspiracies. Your own ministers would smile during council meetings while secretly corresponding with foreign powers. The Imperial Guard, supposedly your protectors, had assassinated more czars than foreign enemies ever could. Paul I surrounded himself with military precision and Germanic discipline. He changed the palace guard daily, slept in different rooms, and trusted no one completely. It didn't matter. In 1701, his own officers strangled him with a silk scarf in his bedroom. Even your children weren't safe. They were either potential heirs to steal your throne or future rulers who might judge your reign too harshly. In Imperial Russia, family dinners weren't just awkward. They were potentially fatal. But the real nightmare began when you looked beyond Russia's borders. Sweden to the north, the Ottoman Empire to the south, Poland to the west, Prussia breathing down your neck. Every neighboring power viewed Russia as either a threat to be crushed or territory to be carved up. Charles XII of Sweden nearly ended the Russian Empire before it truly began, marching through the frozen wasteland toward Moscow until Peter the Great finally stopped him at Poltava. But victories came at horrific costs. Tens of thousands of Russian soldiers froze to death defending their homeland. Then came Napoleon, The Grande Armée, 600,000 soldiers marching toward Moscow like an unstoppable plague. Alexander I faced an impossible choice: fight and lose everything, or retreat and watch his empire burn. Moscow did burn, but winter became Russia's greatest ally, devouring Napoleon's army until only frozen corpses marked their retreat. The Crimean War exposed Russia's military weakness to the world. The most powerful empire on earth couldn't defeat Britain and France, fighting thousands of miles from home. Russian soldiers charged with medieval tactics against modern rifles. The result? Slaughter. Every war meant gambling your empire's survival. Every peace treaty meant showing weakness to rivals already planning their next invasion. The Ottoman Empire alone fought Russia 12 separate times. 12 wars, each one threatening to collapse the dynasty entirely. Military defeat didn't just mean losing territory, it meant losing legitimacy. And without legitimacy, the throne became nothing more than an expensive target for the next ambitious general or foreign prince. The crown was heavy, but the weight of constant warfare would crush your soul. But your deadliest enemies weren't foreign armies or scheming nobles. They were your own people. 23 million serfs, human property bought, sold, and worked to death on noble estates. Peasants who owned nothing, not even themselves. They looked at your golden palaces while their children starved in mud hovels. They watched you feast on delicacies while they gnawed on bark during famines. Their hatred simmered like a pot ready to boil over. Emelian Pugachev understood this hatred. In 1773, this Cossack leader declared himself the true Tsar Peter III and launched the largest peasant rebellion in Russian history. His army of serfs, Cossacks, and desperate souls swept across the Volga region like wildfire. They weren't just fighting for freedom, they wanted vengeance. Pugachev's rebels crucified landlords, burned estates, and slaughtered anyone associated with the aristocracy. For 2 years, Catherine the Great's empire teetered on the edge of collapse as peasant armies marched toward Moscow, promising to hang every noble from the nearest tree. When Catherine finally crushed the rebellion, Pugachev was drawn and quartered in Red Square. But his execution didn't kill the peasants' rage. It just taught them to hide it better. Every harvest failure meant potential revolution. Every tax increase risked sparking another uprising. The Decembrist revolt of 1825 nearly toppled Nicholas I before he'd properly secured the throne. Young officers, inspired by liberal ideals, demanded constitutional monarchy and the abolition of serfdom. Their punishment? 5 hanged, over 100 exiled to Siberian labor camps. But you couldn't execute an entire population. The people's wrath was patient, persistent, and ultimately unstoppable. They were waiting for their moment to tear down everything you represented. The Orthodox Church proclaimed you God's chosen ruler on earth. This divine mandate was your greatest source of legitimacy and your most dangerous vulnerability. As a czar, you weren't just a political leader, you were the earthly representative of Christ himself. The patriarch crowned you with sacred ceremonies dating back to Byzantine emperors. Every church service prayed for your health and prosperity. Millions of Russians believed defying you meant defying God. But divine power was a double-edged sword that could cut your throat. The Great Schism of 1666 tore Russian Orthodoxy apart. Patriarch Nikon's church reforms created the Old Believers, millions of Russians who viewed the official church as corrupted heresy. They saw you not as God's chosen, but as the Antichrist's puppet. Old Believers burned themselves alive rather than accept your religious authority. They fled to Siberia's wilderness, establishing communities that rejected all government control. Some believed the end times had arrived, and violent resistance against your satanic regime was holy duty. Religious unrest constantly threatened stability. The Solovetsky monastery siege lasted 8 years because monks refused to accept church reforms. Peasant revolts often began as religious protests against ungodly policies. Then came Rasputin. This wild-eyed holy man gained hypnotic influence over Tsarina Alexandra through his supposed ability to heal her hemophiliac son, Alexei. Rasputin's scandals, drinking, sexual debauchery, political meddling, destroyed the royal family's religious credibility. If the Tsar's own family consorted with a debauched peasant mystic, how could they claim divine blessing? The church that crowned you could also damn you. Religious legitimacy was fragile, easily shattered by scandal, heresy, or the wrong patriarch's opposition. Divine right meant nothing if the people stopped believing you were divine. Nicholas II should have been the cautionary tale that ended the Tsarist system forever. He inherited the throne in 1894, unprepared and unwilling. "I am not ready to be Tsar," he confessed. But ready or not, the crown crushed him beneath its weight. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 humiliated the empire. Russia, the great European power, defeated by an Asian nation most Russians couldn't find on a map. Military disasters triggered the 1905 revolution. Bloody Sunday saw imperial troops massacre peaceful protesters outside the Winter Palace. The revolution forced Nicholas to accept constitutional limits on his power. The Tsar, who claimed absolute authority, was reduced to sharing power with an elected parliament. But the real nightmare began in 1914. World War I devoured everything. Russian armies collapsed against German military superiority. Soldiers fought without rifles, ammunition, or adequate food. Millions died in pointless offensives while the home front starved. Rasputin's influence peaked during the war. With Nicholas commanding troops at the front, Alexandra and her mystical advisor effectively ruled the empire. Government ministers changed monthly based on Rasputin's whims or prophecies. The people had enough. February 1917, bread riots in Petrograd escalated into full revolution. Military units joined protesters instead of suppressing them. Nicholas abdicated, ending 3 centuries of Romanov rule. But abdication didn't save him. In July 1918, Bolshevik executioners herded the entire royal family into a basement in Ekaterinburg. Nicholas, Alexandra, their 5 children, and loyal servants faced a firing squad in that cramped cellar. 11 bullets ended the last Tsar's life. Bayonets finished off the children who survived the initial volley. The Romanov dynasty's final chapter was written in blood on a basement floor, their bodies dissolved in acid and scattered in unmarked graves. So here's the brutal truth. If you were Tsar of Imperial Russia, you wouldn't last a year. The crown promised ultimate power, but delivered certain death. Palace conspiracies, peasant revolts, foreign invasions, family betrayals, every threat was waiting to destroy you. Those golden palaces? They were just expensive tombs. If you enjoyed this dive into history's deadliest job, hit subscribe for more stories that'll keep you up at night. And remember, your Monday morning meetings suddenly don't seem so bad. Thanks for watching, and sleep well, if you can.